You're listening to The People's Voice, April 1st to 15th, 2024. Since 2018, 6 women workers in Quebec have been waging a court battle against discrimination in Canada's employment insurance system. To become eligible for EI benefits, a person must have worked between 420 and 700 hours over the past 50 weeks. However, maternity leave benefits are counted as EI benefits and are calculated within the limit of 50 weeks, and maternity leave is not one of the conditions for extending the qualifying period. This scheme clearly penalizes women because women on maternity leave cannot work and therefore cannot accumulate the necessary hours needed to qualify for EI benefits. Furthermore, EI benefits are intended to cover the cost of necessities while unemployed workers find a new job, and is therefore separate from the circumstances that require maternity leave. In 2022, these 6 women won a victory before the Social Security Tribunal, but shamefully, Justin Trudeau's so-called feminist government appealed this historic decision shortly after. However, these women refused to give up, and are pushing back against the argument that EI is already too generous for unemployed women workers. In response to the latest US government interference in Cuba's internal affairs, the Communist Party of Canada has issued a statement strongly condemning the 64-year-old US blockade on Cuba, a major contributor to the current economic difficulties, including shortages of food and electricity. The party notes that the entire purpose of the blockade is to strangle the Cuban Revolution, as stated in a 1960 US State Department memo. US efforts to overthrow President Salvador Allende in Chile used similar methods to undermine the economy and turn the people against the government. In Cuba, however, the people and their government have resisted and prevailed for over 64 years. Party leader Liz Rowley criticized the US Embassy in Cuba for saying that the Cuban government should respect human rights and attend to the needs of the people. The hypocrisy of this demand is clear to many across the world, as the US continues to lend its support for Israel's genocidal assault on Gaza. Canada has been more cooperative with Cuba than the United States, and the Communist Party of Canada is calling on all those who value democracy, sovereignty, peace, and Cuba's contributions to healthcare and education to speak up now for an end to the 6-decade US blockade and remove Cuba from the US list of state-sponsored terrorism. The Canadian Peace Congress also condemns effort by US imperialism to whip up counter-revolutionary violence and disorder by tapping into frustrations of the Cuban people. The illegal blockade of Cuba is a direct cause of people's frustrations and a direct response to the Cuban Revolution overthrowing the hated criminal Batista regime. While the blockade was eased slightly under the Obama administration, the Trump government intensified the blockade in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic and groundlessly placed Cuba on the state sponsor of terrorism list. The Biden administration promised to relax sanctions but has not followed through in any way. Cuba is respected internationally for its generosity and kindness. The Canadian Peace Congress, along with peace-loving and progressive organizations across the world, understand who is responsible for the food shortages and electrical blackouts currently plaguing Cuba's economy. The Canadian Peace Congress reiterates its unwavering solidarity with the Cuban people and their government as they struggle to resolve the current difficulties and defend the gains of their revolution. When nearly 250 auto workers went on strike at Autoport's Halifax facility on February 27th, Unifor knew that the company was preparing to use scabs to break the strike. Since September, 239 workers have been negotiating for a better deal, including a wage increase to reflect the cost of living. The company began to bring in scabs just a few hours into the strike, and in response, Unifor engaged its members across the country in solidarity actions. On March 14th, close to 100 Unifor members stopped and held up a CN train near Winnipeg, where they proceeded to open a second picket line. The strike highlights the importance of labor unity and solidarity. If Autoport is able to weaken the union through its strike-busting tactics, employers across the country will be emboldened to use the same methods. Anti-scab legislation is therefore urgently needed as a key element for upholding workers' constitutional rights to free and fair collective bargaining. Unifor has noted that the 3 longest labor disputes in its history all involve the employer's use of scabs. In December 2023, the Ontario government announced that it will be permitting the sale of beer, cider, wine, and pre-mixed cocktails in grocery stores, big box stores, and convenience stores, while the publicly owned Liquor Control Board of Ontario, or LCBO, will retain its monopoly on hard liquor. The LCBO has over 8,000 unionized employees represented by United Food and Commercial Workers in close to 700 stores across the province of Ontario. The Ford government's shift from public to private control of alcohol sales undermines social responsibility by taking away decent union jobs and a significant source of public revenue. The Ontario Provincial Committee of the Communist Party of Canada adopted a special resolution calling for the reversal of privatized alcohol sales, for the provincial government to expand and strengthen the publicly owned LCBO, absorb privately owned LCBO convenience outlets in rural Ontario and wine kiosks located in grocery stores, place the beer store under public ownership through the LCBO, place all privately owned cannabis retail shops under the public ownership of the LCBO, and increase the LCBO hours of operation and open new stores where necessary. The Communist Party of Canada also calls on the government to utilize the LCBO's retail monopoly to mitigate the harmful impacts of alcohol addiction. The party notes that both the beer store and the LCBO have extensive infrastructure in all parts of Ontario, which could be used to improve food security by designing a public food distribution system modeled on the low cost and province-wide uniformity that currently exists for alcohol beverages, particularly in remote communities. That's all for now. If you're interested in strengthening working-class press in Canada, consider lending your support to the People's Voice Fund Drive at pvonline.ca.